Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's candidate forum presented by the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber represents nearly 900 businesses with a mission to promote a positive and growing business environment. We present tonight's forum to provide an unbiased and nonpartisan opportunity for voters to learn about the goals, ideas, and priorities of the 5 individuals who are candidates in the upcoming City Council general election on May 6th. We thank Hill Country University Center for providing tonight's venue, and we also thank you, our partner, FBG Live, as this event is being live streamed and will be available for viewing on demand. My name is Penny McBride. I'm the President and CEO of the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce, and tonight I will serve as your moderator. In just a moment, I will introduce each candidate using a bio that they presented, and we'll be calling on them in an order of a random draw that was conducted earlier this evening. Each candidate will then be able to make a 3-minute opening statement. Following introductions, I will ask the candidates a set of curated questions around a broad assortment of community issues and concerns. I also invite you to submit questions for consideration by writing them on the index cards that were provided in your chairs. We will just hold them up when you have a question complete, and a volunteer will come by to pick it up and bring it to the moderator. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to provide a 2-minute response to the questions. There are no rebuttals, and the candidates have been asked to refrain from interrupting one another's response. I will alternate the order in which we pose questions so that each candidate has an opportunity to answer it first. As a reminder to our candidates, our timer, show yourself. There you go. Our timer will indicate when you have 1 minute left and when your time has expired. In the interest of getting to as many questions, we ask that you respect all time limits. If you exceed your time limit, I will have the unfortunate task of interrupting you. Now, let's meet our candidates, and again, these are in the order of a random draw this evening. First, I'll introduce to you Timothy Ellis Riley. He is a master teacher of performing arts, professional theater director, producer, writer, equity actor, designer, HVAC technician, and an established collaborator with Fredericksburg City staff. Timothy currently serves as vice president of the nonprofit FBG Shines, helping finance the new dock at Lady Bird Park, and in collaboration with City and County received approval for installation of 5 car charging stations at Mark Plots. Timothy has called Fredericksburg home nearly 20 years and is committed to helping Fredericksburg be resilient for the difficult future ahead. Mr. Riley, good evening. Please start your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Yes. We'll all get used to these microphones. My name, this great microphone and this great sound and this great space, this is where I think the city council meetings should be. I believe that all this technology should be used for our benefit even tonight. As a part of our, younger candidates, perhaps technology is more a part of my life and has been more integrated in my life growing up for longer, and perhaps it's more important to me. I'm not sure how many times you've witnessed a city council meeting online or a planning and zoning meeting online. They're actually very different. They have different the planning and zoning meeting, I actually believe, is a better use of that technology. And I think that this room and this space allows for much more people. You know, we had planned for many more to be here. It'd be great for our city council rooms to actually be able to welcome more people to the room and utilize the technology and things like Fredericksburg Shines, or Fredericksburg Live, I apologize. Even in the last week, I've been able to email with Penny while she was on the plane back from Vietnam. Now that's using technology. And as a part of using technology, and as I've continued to say, as I've had my journey trying to step up as a leader in our community, is that I would love to be able to live poll the audience. I would love to be able to use technology to be able to gain more data. I believe that over the last few years, that word data or data has become more and more part of our vernacular. And it's because that's the kind of information that helps us make quality decisions. I am just one person. There would be many other representatives, many helpers, so many familiar faces in this room. It does end up being ultimately the same faces, the same individuals in many, many cases that are stepping up and trying to answer the call of our community. These things, of course, have been outlined in the path to the future, of which during my journeys here is the reason why it's on our website. Of course, our city website needs a lot of help and work if you would like to be more interactive with the policies and the education that our city can offer. And I, as Timothy Ellis Riley, and the experience that Penny laid out there, believe that I can offer a point of view and aid to directing our city staff, which is a fantastic city staff that is there ready to do what a group of people decide together. Thank you, and I hope to have your vote. Timothy Ellis Riley.
Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce to you Bobby Watson. He moved to Fredericksburg in 2000 from Addison, Texas, where he served on the Addison City Council. Bobby has a degree in architecture from the University of Texas at Arlington. He has more than 40 years of experience as a successful business person and more than 15 years of continuous involvement in the Fredericksburg community, including leadership Gillespie County and the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce. He has also served on the Fredericksburg's Planning and Zoning Commission and has been the city liaison to the Fredericksburg Convention and Visitor Bureau, Gillespie County Economic Development Commission, and Gillespie County Airport Advisory Board. He has served as a city council member for 8 years. Good evening, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Penny. It has been an honor to have been elected to the city council and to serve the citizens of Fredericksburg for 8 years. I love Fredericksburg. It is truly an amazing town. And what I value most about Fredericksburg is its residents. They are what makes Fredericksburg amazing. I'm running for re-election to City Council because Fredericksburg needs experienced and committed leadership that will balance between managing the town's continued growth as well as not forgetting our rich heritage as well as our quality of life. Being involved in our community for the last 15 plus years has been very important to me, and I believe that my resume will support that. I believe Fredericksburg's biggest challenges are water, the availability, conservation, and the infrastructure to serve our town. Quality of life, maintaining and improving the quality of life for the residents of our town. Workforce, the availability and housing that is affordable to them. Parks, improving and expanding our facilities for the growing number of kids and adults playing sports, and managing growth, long-term planning, honoring our heritage, and don't lose Fredericksburg. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions tonight.
Thank you very much. Next, I'll introduce to you Randy Briley. He is a U.S. Navy veteran who served in the Submarine Force Atlantic. In his professional career, he was a consultant to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., before moving to Texas in 1989. He is now retired following a corporate career, rising through the ranks to become Vice President of North American Channels for Motorola. He is married to Charlotte and is the proud father of Hannah and Taylor. His local civic involvement includes serving on Fredericksburg's Quality of Life Visioning Committee and Mayor Hoover's STR Task Force. He has also served on the board of the Pioneer Museum and volunteers with the Hill Country Community Need Council. Welcome, Mr. Briley.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up if that's okay. Hopefully, can you hear me? No.
Tap the mute button right, please. There you go.
Okay, off we go. So I am a first-time candidate. I have never run for office. Somebody asked me the other day if I was going to be a good politician. I said, absolutely not. I will not be a politician. My life in service really began at 18 years of age. I had signed up for the United States Navy, really because, quite frankly, I came from pretty humble beginnings. I couldn't afford college, and my parents couldn't either. Shortly after taking the pledge to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I received a scholarship from University of Michigan. So I had a tough decision to make. So I sat down and I thought, what was my first commitment? It was the commitment to serve. So that's what I did. So I joined the submarine force. I have a background in electrical engineering, electronic warfare. Yesterday was submarine day, which was an amazing coincidence. And then once I got into the corporate ranks, did some work with the Pentagon, I fell in love with data, because data can be so meaningful to make better decisions. So the more information I can gather and make an intelligent decision, it's a good way to go. So I really fell in love with that approach to solving. So once I finished with the Pentagon, I was hired by a small company, and I was a bench technician. I was fixing stuff, right? After 35 years, I rose to the ranks of vice president. Nobody cares about that title of vice president. I will tell you that, including my wife or kids. Thank you, Charlotte. I love you. What they do care about is the journey. I'm not afraid of hard work. I will get into the ditches. I will dig ditches. I will work. I'll identify problems, and I'll work to solve those problems. So that's really my DNA. At 54, roughly 6 years ago, I guess, our pastor kept talking about the same theme, that if you're pursuing your W-2 and your next title, you're serving the wrong master. And he did that for like 6 or 7 months, and it felt like he was poking me right in the forehead, Penny. And so after 6 or 7 months, we prayerfully stepped back and took the leap to go take care of my father-in-law, who was struggling with dementia at the time. So I went from running a large division to making meals, taking him to the doctor, and taking care of him and watching Dallas Cowboys lose football games. So, to me, that talks about the DNA and who I am. My title's not important. Nobody really cares. It's my work ethic, it's my character, what's important to me, and it's family and community and serving, and that's who I am. So thank you, and I hope to earn your vote.
Next, I would like to introduce to you Sharon Joseph. She is a Fredericksburg native, a graduate of the University of Houston, wife of Jim McAfee, and mother of 4 grown children. Sharon founded Joseph Financial Partners in 1994 and has 40 years experience as a financial advisor. Besides her appointment to the Fredericksburg City Council in 2022, Sharon has served on many boards, including the Good Samaritan Center, Historic Review Board, Bethany Lutheran Church, Hill Country Memorial Foundation, Texas Healthcare Trustees, Texas Hospital Association, Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country Salvation Army, and the Gillespie County Historical Society. She is very active at Bethany Lutheran Church as well, but spending time with her family is her highest priority. Good evening, Ms. Joseph.
Thanks, Penny. And thank you to the Chamber for hosting and advertising this forum. You did a great job. And thanks to the University Center for letting us use this beautiful facility. And thank you for all of you who are here tonight and giving your time to learn more about the candidates. And all of you that are on Fredericksburg Live, thank you for being with us. You know, it's an open and honest dialogue that makes democracy work. So I come to you with no agenda. I grew up in Fredericksburg in the 50s and 60s, and boy, has it changed, mostly for the better. I left to go to college, and I lived in San Marcos, Huntsville, and Houston. When I moved back here, it was with a newfound appreciation for what a privilege it is to live in this wonderful community. So, like my family before me, I volunteered. I worked on committees and accepted appointments on boards that I believed would maintain and enhance Fredericksburg. So why run for city council? Well, I was appointed back in June to fill the term of a council member who had resigned, and I found it to be an effective way to serve. I run not to change things that other city councils have done or to change things that city staff has done, but I run to keep Fredericksburg the great place that it is to live, to work, to raise a family, and to visit. So how do we accomplish that? I believe the answer is twofold: safety and infrastructure. In safety, I supported additional police officers and the completion of the STEP program that was recommended by Chief 4-Hour to assist in hiring and retaining great officers. As a council person, I would continue to support police, fire, and EMS whenever possible. If we don't keep our citizens and our visitors not just safe, but feeling safe, they're not going to come and they're not going to stay. As for infrastructure, our infrastructure is really good, much better than most small towns. But it's not just what's happening on top of the infrastructure, it's the underneath. Water is very important here, and it's something that will always be a concern. But did you know that our leak rate for the city is only 3%? There are some towns our size where the leak rate is 50%. So we have to keep the infrastructure safe and sound. We can argue about neighborhoods, short-term rentals, chains on Main, drinks on Main. All of those things are important. But unless we keep the water coming in, the sewage going out, and mayhem off the streets, people are not going to come, they're not going to stay, they're not going to visit, and the ones that are here are going to leave. That's why I'm running for city council. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, I'll introduce to you Charlie Keeney. He is a Fredericksburg native. He believes that public service begins with community knowledge. Along with his lifelong residency, Charlie has gained practical knowledge and real-world experience from the 24 years he owned and operated a business on Main Street and 24 years as a local real estate broker. His experience with the city of Fredericksburg includes service as a council member and mayor. He has also served on the Planning and Zoning Commission and Historical Committee that crafted Fredericksburg's first historical district ordinance. He's also served on the FISD School Board and is a graduate of Leadership Gillespie County. He and his wife Jean have been married 48 years and have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Good evening, Mr. Keeney.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm going to thank you, Penny, and the Chamber of Commerce for having this facility. I want to thank you folks for taking time of your evening to be here, as well as those on Fredericksburg Live. And I certainly want to thank the University Center for having this wonderful venue for us to have you folks here, as well as the candidates. My goal here this evening is to achieve convincing you all that you can trust me and garner your support and vote in this election. That's important. You know, I'm not going to dwell with all the wonderful things that I've done in Fredericksburg, because that's not important. It's what we can do in the future. I want to allude to a few things that are what I call important, and 2 of them I call kicking the can down the road. If you all have been to some of my forums before, I always say, why are we kicking this can down the road? And 2 of the issues that we continue, in my opinion, what I say is my opinion, is the STRs, and I think hopefully in the near future I could be part of that. Let's quit kicking the can. And the other one is affordable housing. Those two cans have been kicked down the county road, the city streets for a number of years, and we need to quit kicking that can. I was on council that did quit kicking the can. We hired a company, Touchstone, to do the golf course out there, and I said, you prove it to me in 5 years, we can break even. They're making money out there. I was on council, as along with the county, we finally quit kicking the can about the relief route around Fredericksburg. So there are times, we are able to quit kicking the can. Water is extremely important. I think that's risen to the top of people's concerns. Certainly isn't important. Without water, we don't do very well here. I, as a council member, have never voted to sell water outside the city limits that are not in the city limits. And I will continue, if on the city council, to adamantly say we're not going to continue or ever continue to sell water outside the city limits and sewer unless they become partners in the city limits and pay city property tax. Parks have always been the kicking dog of budget. If you folks will know, I've always been a strong proponent of parks. I have 7 grandchildren that come to Fredericksburg. We love what we have. We need more. And I will tell you, we've kicked that can down the road. I hope, if I'm on council, that we can direct funds to improve that. I know they have a park comprehensive plan being developed. And I agree with Timothy down there. Don't let it gather dust on the shelf. Let's do something once the plan is done. Council meetings, I would like to see council meetings move back to the evening rather than in the morning, because obviously you folks are here this evening, but I don't know how many of you folks could be here if we'd been here at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I would, again, one vote, but I would advocate for the council to reconsider having meetings in the evening so the working people and young people who might want to run for council could have an opportunity to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your introductions. We'll move on to the questions, but before I do so, a quick reminder, you received a card in your chair. If you'll hold them up overhead, if you do have a question, I'll have a volunteer come pick those up and he'll bring them to me. So thank you for your participation on that front. So candidates, as first, you'll start with this question, Mr. Raley. Would you support a convention center facility in Fredericksburg, support it with some sort of occupancy tax funding, or do you believe we have sufficient current facilities? Thank you.
You know, this is the classic can that's happening. I guess the quick answer most people would say is, if you slap a convention center in and it requires 120 employees, where are they going to live? One great idea that has been in the comprehensive plan and has been in the Path to the Future since I've lived here in 2006 was investing in public transportation. How are we carting, busing people in from Kerrville? If we can't build homes here for less than $400,000, if we can't be able to provide it, I get it, you know. Who's going to sell their property for less than they invested their life in it? But there are creative ideas that have been collecting dust on the shelf for 15 years that might be able to serve that convention center. But all of these ideas, whenever someone comes in and says, hey, I want to put one down there at the Y, at the end of the Y, it's vetted very well. I mean, they're asking these questions. Are you going to build a facility to house your employees? Are you this? Are you that? And that's why those bids are not being successful. That's why they have never been successful. And honestly, we can use our facilities here in our community much more creatively to be able to bring in whichever convention we're talking about. And I know that there is a long list of people who would like to visit. And of course, I support that in any way that we can, realistically. I mean, the second you add more people, then we're talking about water again. You know, these are questions that I'm not too much concerned with, because in 50 years and 100 years, what are we doing? How are we building that public transportation infrastructure? How are we? My time has expired. How are we? How are we? Thank you.
Thank you.
I would support a convention center. In fact, I did. We had put out for bid for several groups to bid for a convention center. We lobbied with the state and were approved to use 6% of the state sales tax to help fund the project. The city council voted the two particular projects that we had selected, voted them down. So we did not approve that center, either one of those centers, to come to town. If we were to approve, or if we were to go out for bid again, I would have to take a look at the applicants and see what they had to offer. If we were to offer the 6% that's available, and that 6% was only a handful of cities in the state that could use that 6%. I'd have to take a look at the requirements that the city needs to have and what their programming would support. So I'd be open to it, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start off with a short story. I had a conversation with Chief Bizzle the other day, and Chief was showing me the number of calls that he is responding to on a weekly basis. On a Monday, Tuesday, it's about 500 calls, give or take a little bit. Wednesday, it starts to creep up, and by Saturday, we have 700 calls that he is having to respond to. And when he showed me the scatter pattern of where those calls are starting to erode or grow out to, if you will. It's down 290. So my concern, when I talk to the CVB, they can tell us analytics on where do our guests come from. Largely, they come from Austin, and they're coming from the San Antonio area and Houston. So where does that traffic come? Straight down Main Street to the Y. And now you think about utilities and infrastructure, those types of things. I don't think we're in a position to do that. And the other part is the one thing that came out of the comprehensive plan survey that most everybody here hopefully responded to. Can you raise your hand if you responded? Good number of folks responded. What was your overall response? small town, small community, hometown, right? Does that go to what you guys asked for? That's my question. I don't think it does. So my answer is no.
Thanks, Randy. I was one of the 2 council people that supported the other, as Bobby calls them, convention centers, but I think we have to stop calling them convention centers and call them conference centers. If you listen to my resume when Penny read it, you'll realize that I've spent a lot of time in conferences and conventions all over the United States, serving on state boards, and our broker-dealer has a big conference every year. So I'm in favor of a conference center, not a convention center, but a conference center, where we could host small meetings of organizations where they could stay at the facilities and have meeting rooms there. And I think that's the new proposal at the Y is going to be like that. And it's totally funded by investors and going to pay for it itself. They're not asking anything from the city or the state, as I understand, for this round. They're not asking anything from us, so it's going to be hard for us to absolutely shut it down. But I think it would be a good idea for the city. I think we can figure out how to handle the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I was part of the council that originally put out the request for proposals and was granted with the Y down there, and those people couldn't quite get it together, and after 2 years of extensions, they stopped. I'm not real familiar with the last proposal on what happened with bringing in foreign people to work and so forth, but yeah, if hot funds are attached to any project, yeah, then the city has some responsibilities and rights, in my opinion, to have some sort of input into that project. However, if it's zoned correctly, if it's zoned commercial, then whoever, an investor, if they want to put in there what is their desires as a property owner, I think they have a right to do that. In the city, I think I agree with Sharon, there just isn't a whole lot you can do except with permitting, inspections, and so forth. Now, I do know on the original one, because of the hot funds, they worked very hard with the city to make it a very attractive, Fredericksburg looking with rock and whatnot. It was really a great concept, restoring the Sunday house that was there and also adding additional Sunday houses. The concept was great. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But without any funding from the city or the state, as a property owner, as an investor, you yourselves, you have a right under those circumstances to do what you need to do to your property. I'm a property rights person, and you would never find me in a situation, and I don't think the city wants to be in a situation in a lawsuit because of a frivolous, we don't want you here attitude. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on, and thank you for submitting questions. There's some commonality with those, so I'll do my best to combine questions to get through more topics as possible, or as many topics as possible. So this next question will start with you, Mr. Watson. Last month, the city of Fredericksburg released results of a citizen survey conducted as part of the comprehensive plan update. Nearly 79% of respondents believe there are not enough housing options currently available, and 47% ranked affordable housing as a priority. If elected, will you consider housing a priority, and what specific actions would you support in that?
Short answer is yes, I would support affordable housing. I think that's the one ingredient that we don't have that keeps us from attracting workforce. There's no place for workforce to live, and I absolutely would approve affordable, or be in favor of affordable housing. I think one of the things that we've looked at several things while I've been on council. There's one thing we haven't looked at, and that's forming a housing authority. And I hope that we have a discussion in the very near future about that. It takes the politics out of the affordable housing equation and really takes a look at how we can solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. So I'll invoke a gentleman's name here. That doesn't mean he supports me or endorses me in any way, shape, or form. But I had some time with Vincent Michael recently, and Vincent issued a document to the city I think it's roughly 14 months ago now, give or take a little bit. And he issued a number of requests and things that we should be taking a look at. And here we are 14 months later, and there are no tangible evidence that we've done anything with that document, and I don't know why. The Housing Authority is something that should be set up and should be set up immediately. That can be set up in such a fashion that it's a receivership from publicly owned property. That could be churches, it could be schools, it could be the city. So when that land moves under the auspices of a housing authority, now we have some property. The biggest issue we have with affordable, attainable housing here is the cost of the dirt. It's not so much to build, it's cost of dirt. So this would remove the barrier of the dirt. Now whether the city or the housing authority retains ownership of the land itself and we build property on top of it, that's an approach. That's going to lower the cost of acquisition of that home. So I think I would take immediate action to get the housing authority set up. I would ask, why in the world haven't we done this after 14 months? What is causing the delay? And I would pursue that. I have another idea around Habitat for Humanity approach for our first responders. I think there's an important opportunity that we can help support our police, fire, and EMS as well. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you. The question with affordable housing is, how much of your tax dollars or your city property do you want to commit to affordable housing? I don't know the answer to that. I know in the survey, which was very impressive, the amount of answers that came back, that one of the #1 things was affordable housing. I just want to understand more how much people want to commit of their own tax dollars to it. Or is there another way that we can do it? Could we have a way for people to come from outside of the city to work here more easily, like some sort of public transportation from Kerrville, from Comfort, or from Stonewall, something of that nature? I think we just haven't explored all of the options yet. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, when I first got on council, I asked somebody to define affordable workforce or obtainable housing. There was no definition. The city at that time, when I got elected, we did hire a consultant to give us an idea what affordable housing was. I may have the numbers wrong, but I think you could afford a house at under $300,000, and you had to have a household income of $75,000, and that was a residential home. The beginnings was an attempt to do that, and it never panned out. Those homes sold a few under 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. Now, the city hired Vince Michelle, again, he consulted to come up with what is affordable, attainable housing. If I got his story right, his only solution was the Public Facilities Corporation. Now, folks, I want to tell you, you really got to dig in to understand what that is. And I'm not going to try to explain what it is, but I will tell you, he did say there will be no residential housing here that's affordable. It will be apartments. I believe that's a direct quote, and I would hope that's a very fair statement. Being in the business, I will share with you today, the average median price of a home in Fredericksburg is $587,500, okay? That's up from it was last year's first quarter. Don't let the STRs or anything be convincing you that's driving up the prices of the homes. And no, it's supply and demand. Always has been, always will be. So is there a solution to affordable housing? Sure, it could be. But I will tell you, it should not be a city issue. It should be a county and a community issue. That includes the businesses. So there's going to be a solution. All these folks need to be involved with that solution. And I agree with Sharon. We need to understand as a citizens, what's it going to cost the citizens of Fredericksburg in tax money and infrastructure, et cetera. I'm not going to go into that because I don't know all the details, but I think it's very important if we go to that. That's why in 14 months I believe nothing has happened, because the only solution we had was a Public Facilities Corporation. And there's a lot of details that need to be communicated to the public. Thank you.
You know, I get really excited at these meetings because I believe that I'm trying to answer a call. This concept of a document collecting dust is something I brought up at our last meeting, and this is about repetition. Affordable housing isn't being solved because it's not a real priority. And so it's collecting dust. And it's another example of these documents, these task forces, these groups of dedicated people coming up with great ideas, putting forth, saying, here is our solutions as a community. And then it doesn't get anything, nothing gets accomplished because it's a tactic to say, look at all the work we've done. We have a comprehensive plan right here. We did all the work. So they can always point at what should be done, they. I would like to be a part of they. Electing a person like myself is holding a person like myself accountable for actually being different than what I've experienced over the 15 to 20 years since I've been here, and the 20, 30, 40 years of since the most of this room has been here. I see plenty of signs of our candidates up here who are, majority of their signs are on properties that are for sale. Majority of their signs are on properties that are STRs. We have to actually step up and walk up to these owners, these property owners, and ask them to do the impossible, which is the only reason why I own a home in this community, is because the homeowner said, would you like this house? You've been such a great member of our community. I will sell you this house. A bank isn't going to give you this home, Mr. Riley, but I will help make this happen. That is a miracle. I'm a son of a preacher man. I believe in miracles.
Sorry, your
and
time is
it
expired.
would take a miracle.
I started with you, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Get myself confused. There's a couple here I'm going to combine around recreation. Recreation is important to citizens of all ages. What, if anything, do you believe the city should do to increase or enhance recreational activities and facilities? And can that be done without increasing local taxes?
Penny, that is a tall order. I will say that we have national brands in our town. We have Walmart, H-E-B, AT&T, Verizon. We have a number of other entities here that could help offset the cost. A number of years ago, I took a ride. There was a city tour that was offered by Mayor Linda at the time, and we toured all the facilities and what was going on. And I think at the time there was a sports park that was being proposed. County was going to share the cost along with the city. It was $6.5 million. Then largely that would have fallen to the shoulders of, at the time, the taxpayers of the city. And my request was, why don't we approach some of these national brands to see if they would provide sponsorship for these parks? If you guys saw my ad in the paper today, I have an 18-year-old grandbaby. I want her to have beautiful parks to play in, splash pads, all those things. We all want that. But how can we help do that without leveraging tax on top of the average citizen here? So I wouldn't agree for trying to pass a bond or trying to increase taxes in any way, shape, or form. I would look for corporate sponsorship to see what we could do to offset building those parks, but I would support having them done, if at all possible, from a financial perspective.
Great idea, Randy. But your grandbaby's 18 months old, not 18 years old. And that was really a cute picture in the paper. But that's not the one that was in the paper.
Thank you.
So the survey, which was well responded to, asked for more parks and open space in the city. I think Randy's idea is a great one, and I'm going to piggyback on that. We need to look for corporate sponsors and work with them. And one of the things that we've instituted is for subdivisions, asking them to have parks in subdivisions. So I think that would facilitate. And then we've got the sidewalk ordinance that we've got going, where you put in something new, you have to put a sidewalk in front of it, and the city's been building $100,000 worth of sidewalks every year, so that gives people more walking and bicycle riding space. So we're working toward it. Right now there's a survey going on that's a park survey. It would be really good if everybody would go to the city website and participate in that park survey, because we really need to know what it is from a recreational standpoint that you want and you need, and then how can we move things that direction with corporate-private partnerships. Thank you.
I think you all know parks is near and dear to my heart, and I will tell you that when I was on the FISD school board, I said if somebody wants to build $1 million science building and they want to put the biggest name up there you can, put it on there. Being from Texas A&M, there isn't a building out there yet that isn't named after somebody that gave a lot of dang gum money, because their names are up there. And I agree, it shouldn't just rely on the city and the county to provide that. I do would encourage corporate and individuals, if you want to have a baseball field, a softball field, pickleball now, that's a new sport, okay? Now, I'm going to tell you, I can already tell you what this comprehensive plan is going to do. It's going to say we need more sports, we need more walking trails, we need all that. It costs money. Now, does the city need to share in that? Absolutely. How much? A minimal that we can do. The county needs to share in it. Business needs to share in it. Corporate, private people need to share it. Investors need, not investors, but to come in. We're very blessed here that we have civic organizations, Rotary Club, put in the skate park, the basketball court. I mean, the splash pad. We have been very, HEB, the tennis courts. If you go out there and look at the tennis courts, you'll see a tombstone. Well, that's not a tombstone. My wife's name's on there. And many other people that gave money to build that first tennis court. But HEB was the foundation of that. That's what we need. I personally think we need to hire or find somebody in our city staff that can actually seek and go out and find that money. Somehow advertise it and get it in. And if we can fund it all with private funding, corporate funding, great. But I will tell you, I don't think that will ever happen. But I think the city, the county, and the chamber, business people, we need to do something out there at that property we bought. It hasn't, it's terrible. That's been for 2 years. Again, let's start doing something. That's kicking the can down the road. And I want to tell you, that's one can I want to get finished if I'm elected. Parks, walking trails. It might take 2 years, but I guarantee you I'm not going to spend too many moments not thinking about it. Thank you.
Again, all of these answers are 50, 100-year answers, You have to think that far in advance to be able to get it right today as best we can. Because in order to build this infrastructure we're talking about, it takes our city planners to instigate all of our city staff, whatever we're doing, how we're developing properties, how we're moving through properties, for little steps to be made every single day and within our budget. Of course, once we prioritize what our citizens would like with more of these kinds of surveys and use of technology, we've tried to ask you a few questions today. It's been very tempting. It would be great for you to be able to click a quick button and give us your information. It'd be great for those watching here on FBG Live to be able to participate as well, because they couldn't make it here today for the list of reasons. Maybe they're at the parks. Pickleball, that's fun. I was talking to some member of the tennis association who's out there working hard to make the tennis courts look great out in Lady Bird. And we might have some tennis pickleball rivalry happening with how different sports, different groups of people collaborate. Of course we need more space. We need, the tennis would like to have their space, pickleball would like to have theirs. But what a great opportunity for the community members to prioritize something and yes, raise the money. I mean, if it's a priority, there should be a solution to be able to satisfy a need, even if it's not being built tomorrow. We should be able to see the progress in these ways. I was raised an athlete. I play Sunday morning soccer over on the Heritage Field. We got a sweet little deal over there with our private group. Now it's out. We have to go and find fields to play. We play at HEB. We play at the middle school. That's a hard field to play on. Maybe elect a member that can also play these sports as well.
Your time has expired.
When it comes to parks, that is a huge need for this community. Soccer, we have over 600 kids playing. Baseball, we have over 500 kids and adults. Pickleball, it's a fairly new sport, but it's the hottest thing in the nation, and we have over 200 people playing. Tennis, in fact, the kids and the soccer teams, most of them go to Kerrville to practice because we just don't have the fields. So parks are a big issue. I don't see how we can do it without using tax money to satisfy the needs that we have. We absolutely would love to have private money, to come in and help us. We were going to put 5 new scoreboards in the budget for the baseball fields, which haven't had working scoreboards in 20 years. 5 individuals or 5 companies have stepped up and sponsored all 5 scoreboards, so we did not have to use taxpayers' money. So that's just one example of how things can be done. Scoreboards are a little different than building a sports complex, but it's a start. And the need is great, and I just don't see how we can do it without taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Ms. Joseph, you'll be the first on this question. And again, I'm combining a couple here. In small communities, conflicts of interest are common. Which conflicts would you have in your, if elected, and how would you choose to handle that conflict? Which specific conflict might you have, and how would you choose to handle that conflict?
Well, if the city got a multi-million dollars to invest, I may have a conflict of interest because I'd want my husband and my son to invest it for us, but I don't see that coming along or that even being an issue. I guess the big conflict of interest that I have is my love for the history of Fredericksburg. And I served on the Historic Review Board for more than 20 years. Anna Hudson and I sat down the other day trying to come up with a number, and she said, well, it was long before me. And I said, well, I know it was long before you. It was long before there was an ordinance. But I guess if I have a conflict, it would be my love for the history of Fredericksburg, and I would have to just work my way around that because I believe it's so important to what we do here.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to the Historical District Committee, my attitude was we had the Alamo bulldoze it down. And I had a young lady who said, I want to paint the pins on the hinges. That's the extremes. We came to a really good consensus. I am a property rights person, but times have changed for me. I begin and have now appreciate the historical value of Fredericksburg. So when property rights and historical buildings come into play, I call that a crisscross, and I have to make my decision based on what is best for our community. And sometimes that's kind of goes directly against my property rights, but I feel it's important. There was an article in the paper, I wish you could bring it back, by Ernestine Heinlein. She would have gone but not forgotten all the old buildings that were torn down. Let me tell you what, bulldozers got started up middle of the night and these buildings disappeared. Unfortunately, that was the way Fredericksburg was at that time. Conflict of interest, there are certain rules in state statutes that say when you have a conflict of interest, we have some kind of money that would be, but I will tell you, I've only recused myself once or twice. One time because it wasn't a conflict of interest, but because the perception it would have been a conflict of interest. When that occurs, I always ask the city attorney, where do I stand on this? And he gives me that great advice, you have no conflict. Now, I deal with real estate, and I do represent the sellers out at Stone Ridge. And so when they were discussing approving Stone Ridge Unit 10, I recused myself only because it was perception. It had nothing to do with a financial gain. So I know when I have conflict, and I know when it's perceived to be conflict, and I will always ask the city attorney, where do I stand on this? Thank you.
This question seems to come up just watching the planning and zoning meeting this last week. They asked our city attorney many times, making sure, asking, what is it? And it's a part of the discussion, and that feels good. I think perhaps I'm just going to stab at the one root of this question is that they're in the STR discussions and some of in our community events, when this room is packed and it's full of energy, I think that people don't. There's a certain lack of trust, or just people aren't talking it out in front in public. It's not being as transparent as it could be. And I think over the last few years, that's become better. And as you attend our meetings, our leaders are being forced, and maybe in some ways, or are just learning. They're being educated live on is this a conflict of interest? Now, If there ever is a conflict of interest, and of course I would ask that question at even a hesitation or a perception, as Mr. Keeney says, then I'm off. The one thing that I do own an STR, so that's one of the biggest reasons that keep me in 78624. And so if there was any discussion about an STR and or those things, but I would still look forward to being a part of the solutions and the wording and supporting something like an STR, of course, or whatever other conflict might be. Maybe my chicken eggs and my ducks. I don't know. Perhaps someone's going to come after me about my fowl in my backyard. You think so, Mr. Watson? I keep expecting that card to jump up, and I'm just going to keep going, you know. So, a very important question, and you should be excited that it's a part of the discussion. Thank you.
How do I follow that? Thank you. 8 years on council. I've not really had any conflicts of interest. I have recused myself on several votes, only, as Charlie said, from a perception standpoint. The only property I own in town is the house that I live in. I'm retired, so I really don't have any outside interest other than golf. But to answer the question, I don't believe I have any conflicts, and my experience, I think, leads me to that answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. So I do own a short-term rental. It is a cabin, 1880s. It's one couple that uses it pretty much every weekend, and that's the extent of it. So what I would say is I turn that knowledge from something that potentially you may view as a negative into an asset for the city. So think about it for a second. We have about, as I mentioned earlier, our mayor asked me to be on the STR task force along with Belinda and a few other folks, Tammy Smith. So I have a pretty deep domain knowledge of that, what that industry looks like. There's about 725 STRs in town advertising. 225 of those are owned by women. These ladies are trying to put gas in their cars, groceries on their tables, get their kids to St. Mary's if they can afford to do so. I staunchly support and protect those individuals that are trying to do that. Secondarily is if you look at the number of rooms, and I talked to the city of Arlington and I said, how do you folks pay for the Jerry's House, the Cowboy Stadium? And they said, we tax rental cars and hotels. They have far more hotels than we do, and they have some STRs. So that's how they pay for that. We don't have Jerry's House here, but what I would argue is based on the rooms, overnight costs to the guests, and the average occupancy, I think we can raise about $500,000 annually, reoccurring every single year. And I would do that and protect those dollars for our first responders, police, fire, and EMS. Chief Orhauer has only $30,000 for his training budget, and it's not enough for his folks. It's for continuing education and for the wellness center. I would like to see that number increase dramatically. Think about April 24th, I think that the eclipse is coming into town. We're going to have a huge influx of folks here. How do we help support Chief Orhauer and our EMS and the rest of those first responders? That's where I would go. Tax the tourists, maintain the services.
Thank you very much. Charlie, you will be the first answer on the next question. And again, I'm combining a couple of things here. So the recent comprehensive plan survey indicated citizen concern about Fredericksburg's development path, citing planning for future needs and effective land use and zoning. How will you balance sustainability and economic growth as a council member?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think, I as an individual can't control anything. Sometimes I have some issues with my wife at the house. I've learned after 48 years she controls me. However, the city has zoning in place to control development and growth. There's a zoning map you can pull up on the website. It will tell you, you can put commercial here, you can put R2 residential apartments, R3 higher in density. Zoning will control growth, okay? Again, can you stop somebody coming in here who wants to put an apartment in R2? No. If they have the right permits and everything is proper, they can put one in. Now, if you talk about growth, if you will drive around Fredericksburg, you will see growth unbelievably going on. Out on Live Oak, huge apartment complex going in. Out on 16 North, another apartment complex going in. Friendship Lane, a huge apartment complex going in. In fact, if you saw the 3 towers, I thought, oh my God, what are they building? Silos for ICBM missiles? For the young people that don't know that. So growth is here. Growth is in Texas. It's in Mason. It's in Blanco. It's throughout our state. How do you control it? Well, when I had the service station, I had the people move in. Boy, we're glad we're in Fredericksburg. Great. What do you want to do now? We want to put up a gate and stop everybody else from coming, and that's just not going to happen. So that's how you control growth. Can the community rise up and form a chain across the entrances? No. Back in the day, Fredericksburg, Alfred Patch, as I understood, 1687 and 290 was fought for to come through Fredericksburg because that was the blood life of Fredericksburg. My service station, the local folks gave me my cake, and I like to call them visitors because visitors don't take, they bring and leave money, and they were my icing on the cake. I'll tell a quick story. I'll have to get to it later. Thank you.
One reason I've served with a very small now nonprofit called Fredericksburg Shines, is because of this key word in the question. Penny said sustainability. This is why we helped build a dock out at Ladyburg Reservoir. This is why we're still partnering with the city. Should be in the ground here and within the weeks by Mr. Bailey's word. The 5 car chargers over in San Antonio Street by the gazebo over there across from the jail. Examples of sustainability, things that are actually happening and otherwise wouldn't be happening without a small organization like Fredericksburg Shines and myself. Those things are priorities to me. I continue to say, one analogy I heard recently was being willing to plant a tree that you won't be able to enjoy its shade, right? And that's a vision that I want to be a part of, planting a tree that I might not be able to enjoy its shade. Pretending for 1 second that our small town of Fredericksburg isn't already a city, not planning for the inevitable, not driving out on 290 corridor and realizing why all those calls are out there and it is coming to us. We can't just be trying to, yes, build fences and save us, our small town and its culture. That's technically not ever going anywhere. But what is coming is a lot more concrete, a lot of development, and we need really, really smart engineers, city planners, those kinds of things, which we already do have in our city staff, to be able to plan how we develop that now and how we put in windows, how we put in air conditioning units. That's something I'll talk about once or twice more. I work for Howdy HVAC Service, Mr. Roy Anderson. And I spent 3 hours in Fred Helms today putting in lights for Fred. I'm a part of development, and it doesn't look pretty. Thank you.
The question is, the timing is very good on this question. One, we're entering into the comp plan process. We've had our several public meetings. We've had the first survey. We will continue to, we're in the parks survey right now. We'll have another open house for the comp plan as well as the parks. So my advice would be get involved in that process so that your voice is heard as to what you would like to see happen in this town, how it's going to evolve, how it's going to grow. The comp plan is our roadmap for the next 5 to 10 years, and you need to be a part of that process. Just talking about the growth, our sales tax, which is it, Todd? Of the overall budget, our sales tax, our property tax, which everybody is very familiar with, is only 23.5%. Sales tax is 40.8%. So sales tax we get from tourists. So if we didn't have the growth and the tourism, our property taxes would be a lot higher. I agree we need to balance growth as well as tourism and everything else we do in town, but we need people to be involved in the comp plan process so we know how to move forward over the next 10 years.
Thank you. So I think of that question not so much in terms of building out 290. I'm really thinking more about Main Street for a minute. So, for example, the number of alcohol-based businesses that are on Main Street, I really think that we've hit a limit where through zoning or capping or however we can approach that, I'd like to take a look at how we could possibly take a look at that. Otherwise, the only margin-rich product being sold on Main Street in the next couple of years, I wrote about this in 2018 actually, was going to be alcohol-based businesses. So I want to look at an idea. So I was in Austin not too long ago at the Omni Hotel. At the very top of the Omni Hotel, they have a technology incubator company. And it's a room about this size. It's shared by 6 or 7 startup companies. They share the utilities, the space, all of that. And that's a way that small technology companies can share the burden of cost of potentially becoming a larger company. Ernie has done some amazing work in the culinary art space. I can see that same concept coming to fruition through culinary efforts, small kitchens working together to see if they can incubate and become larger businesses that eventually move onto Main Street and better develop that corridor up towards the Y, towards those incubator businesses. So I want to encourage and support local retailers. I want to grow small businesses, and I want to see those folks thrive in this economy in this town that is so incredibly special.
So my husband moved here 33 years ago, and the first thing he said was, let's build a barbed wire fence all the way around the town because I like it just the way it is. So I told him a story that my daddy always used to say to me, that a town, a church, or an organization is either growing or it's dying. If you can't see the growth, then the death is moving in and you don't realize it yet. So we do have to have growth, but the key is quality growth. So as I see it, the two things to quality growth are zoning, which we have great zoning, but then enforcement of that zoning, which we let slip a little bit. And now we have more code enforcement officers. We've put some of the code enforcement under the police department, so there's a lot more enforcement of zoning. The other thing we need is quality tourism. We have to have these people come in, and as Randy just talked about the sales tax dollars, we've got to have that. So we've got to have quality growth. We've got to have from zoning and from tourism, and we've got to have enforcement. My daddy used to say, I've picked cotton and I've picked tourists, and the second is a lot easier and pays a whole lot more money. You're done? Oh, last?
All right, we'll start our rotation again. We are in a condition of persistent drought. What actions would you take if elected in considering development requests in the face of water scarcity?
You know, no one likes to sacrifice, but that's why in my introduction that Penny read, I do believe in a hard future. I mean, I don't know, in any of your life experience, has it ever gotten easier? Is life easy? Not in my 42 years almost. And I only expect it to get harder for me personally and for everybody around me. You know, as I mentioned, I'm a son of a preacher man, and I had the apocalypse and all of it beat into me pretty early. And I'm not, and if you understand any version of that story, you have to do, you know, there will be more floods. There will be less water. There will be ice. There will be fire. So this is why I'm talking about a 5 to 10 year comprehensive plan that never gets looked at. I do continually say that if I given the chance, I will use my energy to address every single thing on any plan that we put forth. And I see confused faces out there. I'm not quite sure why, because it's been a fact, as we've said in multiple of our forums, when that comprehensive plan was done in 2006, it's now 2023, and they've all admitted. I've sat here through great leaders. Again, you know, this is like a table of respect, and we're all just getting a roast. You know, this isn't about any one individual, anyone not doing the, you know, but it is just the track record. And I would always just hope that if you're given the chance to change that track record, you might try, you know, especially in this arena. I'm just so scared to start another sentence. To do this in 2 minutes, you know, this skill set is not required. You know, what we're forced to do in these forums is not productive.
This is a hard question to answer because we're in the drought. We've been in a drought for a number of years. Our water levels are the lowest they've been since 2008. We've just moved to stage 4 water restrictions, which during average times it should save us about 20%. During peak times it should save us about 40% in water. We're continuing to grow as a city, but 70% of the water we use is for landscape. So we really need to think hard about, and I'm guilty as the next person. I have St. Augustine grass, and I like a nice green lawn. But we need to think about what type of plants we use, how we use the water. We need rain. That's the real answer. I don't control that, but we need rain. And we actually need about 22 inches of rain to recharge the aquifers. Not all at once, but over time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chris Canese, I had a pleasure of going on a tour with that gentleman. If you ever have a chance, Chris, don't get mad at me, go on a tour with him. He's incredibly passionate, smart. I mean, he's just a wealth for this city here. So I tell you, Chris took me on a tour, and he took me to all the various well sites and showed me the pump stations and recharge stations in San Antonio and up 290. And I said, Chris, I don't have a magic wand, I don't have a cape, but if I found $5 million somewhere, somehow, what would you do with it? And he said, Randy, I'd go find a new well site, a new pad site. What does that expansion look like in the next 5 to 10 years? We toured the facilities, the recharge stations, and he has a term for retention tanks. I forget what he called it, but they've built out redundancy in that infrastructure that I feel very good about. The question becomes recharge stations and how fast can we recharge. So I would look for expansion at up to 90, and where would that be? The second part is, the city has us on stage 4, and my simple request is, if you got 6 or 7 zones at your house, shut off the ones that are non-essential. I mean, we're going to have brown backyards. Let's water your what's important to you maybe, but do more than what the city's asking. The other part is, in talking to constituents out here, some folks work 8 to 5, but they have gardens, and this is their food. So the question is, could the city provide a variance for individuals that have gardens that could water when they come home after 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock at night, not watering at 11 o'clock at night? But let's have a heart for our citizens, make sure we're responding to their needs and responding to the recharge issues that we're facing here. Thank you.
I was here during the drought of the 50s, not real cognizant because I was born in 48, but I can remember vividly a rainstorm on a Sunday morning, and we were in church at Bethany, the Bethany that's there now, and grown men stood up and ran out and stood on the sidewalk with water streaming down their faces and down their wool suits, which is what suits were made of in those days. We didn't have polyester. And it really made an impression on me as a 6-year-old child. So I know how important that is. I still have signs in my garage that say, we have well water. My parents and the neighbors both had wells. A lot of people had wells at that time. And if you thought if you had a well that you weren't on the city water. So you went ahead and watered your lawn anyway. Now we've learned it's all tied to the same aquifer. And what I learned in answering the questions that the Republican Club asked is that our aquifer is very isolated. We're on the Ellenberger Aquifer, and we are about the only city on it. Even Stonewall isn't part of it. So we have to find a way to conserve. Randy's idea of a brown backyard is a great idea. We have got to take care of water ourselves. We've got to learn to conserve.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think the city's been very proactive in water conservation. You know, we were at stage 3 for many years, and now we're in stage 4. Take a good hard look at what stage 4 watering restrictions entitle you to or not entitle you to. I think it's a start, but I think as an elected official, I would take another hard look at that because if I'm reading it correctly, and I think this is a fair statement, as I read it, and I had an attorney read it and she agreed with me, you can water your yards 5 days a week, maybe even 7 days a week, handheld, bucket, and or seepage irrigation. Take a look at that. So, yeah, you can keep your gardens growing, and I believe, if I read it correctly, you can actually water from 7 to 11 by handheld or bucket. So if the city really wants to get proactive on stage 4, there should be some things in there that they should take a hard look at on watering. Being my age and time, a little more time on my hands, I can stand there with a faucet and a hose and water my yard all day long, or not necessarily all day, but the appropriate hours, 5 days a week, if I read it correctly. And I would hope you all would read it and verify that statement that I just made. As far as producing another well, I don't know if that's a great idea or not. I think the conservation is the first, kind of like a budget. How do you get more into the black? You cut expenses. How do you get more water? You cut water usage. One day, you know, as we know, watching enough Westerns, people will kill you for water. And I do believe at some point in time, hopefully not in my lifetime, my children's lifetime, or my grandchildren, or my great-grandchildren's time, we don't get to that situation. But we have more and more people moving here, and water will certainly be an issue if we continue in this drought. Thank you.
For Fredericksburg will be in the path of totality for the solar eclipse. City staff has been working for several years with other stakeholders to prepare. Are we prepared, and are you committed to the necessary resources needed for the city to be prepared for that event?
We're not completely prepared yet. We're still planning. We've been planning for over a year now, and that includes state agencies as well as county and city agencies. We're anticipating over 100,000 people in Gillespie County, probably more than 1 million people in the region. The airport is planning for 300 airplanes to land to watch the eclipse. Yes, I am committed to funding whatever we need to, because we need to have it a safe event. We need to have the police in the proper place. We need to have the proper utilities, everything we can. We opened up the camping facilities at Lady Bird Park yesterday. They're already half full. So the one thing I'm concerned about, if it turns up cloudy that day, we're going to have a mass exodus looking for clear skies. So that is a concern. But the county needs to be prepared as well, because people will be camping in pastures and alongside the roads. And my real fear is we'll be short of manpower to enforce rules and laws. So thank you.
Thank you, Penny. I've often been told it's not the story you tell, it's how people feel about the story. So I'll tell a story simply because I think it's worth mentioning. We've had 146 active shooters incidents in the United States since January 1 of this year. I'm not anti-gun. I have concealed carry. I'm not carrying right now, Penny, I promise. So it's not a gun issue, it's a people issue, it's a social epidemic issue. So when we, on the weekends, I think about, we have roughly 12,000 folks that come to our town. We'd go to 30,000, and the biggest draw to our town post-COVID, because they couldn't get to Las Vegas or New Orleans, was alcohol, right? So now we're going to go from 12,000 to whatever number Bobby mentioned here. And my biggest concern, the thing I'm thinking about, is how quickly can I help Chief Vorhauer get that training budget up to snuff, make sure he has the capital assets. Currently, he's missing 7 billets of qualified officers that should be in chairs at this point. The other part, he has a really aggressive, and I commend him for his recruitment program, that if you're 21 years of age and you're a good, clean candidate from a record perspective, and you qualify and meet his criteria, it's pretty high, but they will bring you in and actually train you. And this is a great opportunity for local residents and kids that qualify for this, and provide, I believe, a 3-year commitment, Chief. Is that correct? I would love that, because it's people that live here, love the town, have the heritage, they're going to stay here, amazing credentials and quality education that the chief can provide here. So my heart and head goes to helping first responders get ready for that event.
So are we ready for the eclipse? The eclipse is going to be Oktoberfest times 3 or so, is what I've heard. So my answer was going to be, no, we're not really ready. I knew some time ago that there weren't any porta potties available to rent already anymore. And then this morning at Coffee with the City Manager, Chief Bissell reported that there weren't any ambulances available. So I think in answer to the question, if there's ever a time that we need to tap into the rainy day fund that the city has, now would be the time to do it, to prepare for this eclipse. But I didn't even think about Bobby Watson's problem of a cloudy sky. That's really frightening, and I don't have an answer for that. So, but 300 airplanes and a cloudy sky. Well, if it's real cloudy, maybe we won't have 300 airplanes. But we do need to prepare for the eclipse. It's going to be a thing that it's mind-boggling.
I think our emergency management folks are doing an absolute great job in preparation. And I had the good fortune of being, well, not the good fortune of the ice storm of 2021. I got to watch those folks, the state, the federal, and county folks get together and manage that as best they could. Were they 100% fully prepared for an ice storm? No, they were not. But they gathered not only up their power folks, but they also got help from our big sponsors, HB Water, other social organizations. The community pitched in as well during that time. So that's important. You know, we as a community need to prepare ourselves as well for that. If you have an extra room, rent it out. If you have a place out in the country, let them have had it. So. But are we going to be fully prepared? I will tell you, when the event happens, they will be as prepared they can possibly be. And I am a firm believer in the safety and the health of our citizens. And I would suggest to you, a budget needs to be prepared to handle that. Because it's not only for the visitors coming here, it's for our citizens' safety and health and welfare. And I'm appalled that the city has not put the money in to be prepared for that, because it will cost money to do that. And I'm hoping if I'm elected, that budget will be increased for our EMS, police, fire, and all the first responders that are necessary to make that as smooth a transition during that eclipse as possible. Thank you.
It is a unique natural disaster, kind of, which we're planning for. And I think that the group of people that have been meeting all this time is a great model for how we as a city and as citizens should continue to prepare for future natural disasters, for whatever they may be. If it's parks, if it's, whatever the list could be. So it's great to see that a group of people are planning so far ahead for April 2024. How many other items on our community's lists do we have that kind of reaction and enlistment? And I would say there are probably some great examples of that happening, but there needs to be more. How do we get more people in this room? How do we get more people to vote? How do we get more participation? How do we educate our citizens more? These are all very important. for the success of whatever's coming in April. There is another eclipse in October, the Ring of Fire. Look forward to that one. 1 minute, thank you. And I doubt that we're prepared, but we are surely going to feel like we put our best foot forward, and we're not going to hold anyone accountable like our police or anybody else. I would say, they're going to put their best foot forward, and they're doing all the work. And we've got 100 people already making the plans and doing and putting the numbers together, because that's what it takes. So I think we're going to be satisfied with the results, hopefully, but we do need to plan for all instances, any occurrence that could happen, like cloudy skies. It's actually a big deal. I was reading about it the other day. You probably have a lot of disappointed people on Main Street as well, So I look forward to the eclipse. I'm glad it's coming our way. And I got to enjoy one of the last major similar eclipse, and I was in Yellowstone. Come join me on a hike sometime at Enchanted Rock. Thank you.
Time for one final question, and I'll be nice and make it a softball. How's that?
Too easy.
Why have you chosen to seek election or re-election to the council, and what will your number one priority be when elected?
So, I'll go first. So that's a tough question, because I've had my wife ask me the same question, my kids, and so forth. I go back to 2018. Okay, so in 2018, myself, Janie Weisinger, Tamisha Jumper, Mary Gallagher, you may know some of those folks, Betsy, John Weisinger was really the mentor. And he asked me to get involved with the 2018 visioning. So what I did, for 7 months, we all got together and we worked through a number of issues. Police, fire, and EMS was priority number one. We talked about hospitality. We talked about the impending growth that's going to come down 290 that we can't control. We talked about alcohol on Main Street. We talked about preservation of historical assets. None of this work will you find in the city document. Absolutely none of it. And so my question is, how many times do you feel as a citizen your voice is being heard? You don't have to raise your hand. I didn't feel my voice is being heard. So that's what activated me. I've been very active with the council from the chair perspective, not the desk perspective, for a long time. So I have a strong passion to make sure that our citizens are heard and we're taking action based upon what's required for the betterment of our community. Citizens first, families first.
I accepted the position on City Council because I love Fredericksburg, and it was so interesting to learn how much I didn't know and all the different aspects of it. So it was fascinating, so that made me decide to run. My number one priority would be, as I stated in my opening sentence, would be safety. I think it's very important that people not just be safe, but that they feel safe. The fact that we don't have homeless tents on the little park in the middle of town, and that we don't have graffiti all over the walls, and that we don't have people roaming around looking dangerous is hugely important. And a lot of that is because of the wonderful police officers that we have and the support that they have from City Council and the residents. So safety would still be number one, not just the illusion of it, but actually to be safe, but that is magnified in the way that the town looks and feels. I think that's hugely important. So that'd be my number one priority.
Yeah, thank you. I don't disagree with what you just say, Sharon. I think the safety and welfare of our community is foremost on my mind because I'm part of that community. For folks that have been at budget meetings and budget hearings, I think my track record will share with you that I've always fought very hard to have additional EMS personnel, fire personnel, police officer personnel, and more as importantly, the equipment for them to come help us. And I will share with you, I had that opportunity. Unfortunately, my wife broke her hip, and the service we received from the EMS was spectacular. And I was glad we had them. Hope I never have to use them again. So I think that's so critical. We need to have the personnel to provide us those services that are so critical for our standard of living here. The other thing that I think is of equal priority, and I think is so important, I think Randy kind of addressed that a bit, is public input. I think the citizens of Fredericksburg have been shortchanged by having meetings in the morning at 9 a.m. If I were elected, I would, again, one vote, and I think it's time for the public, and I agree with that, is they need to have an opportunity to come to city council meetings or other meetings when they're in the evening. Whether it's on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday, doesn't matter. But that public is being turned off by not being able to come at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm one of them. Sometimes I don't get up that early. But anyway, I would push as a one-man vote on city council to consider, for the council to consider moving the meetings back to the evening. I will share with you right quickly, this meeting's in the evening. The hospital of town hall meeting was in the evening. Most everything you go to is in the evening because people, now some of us are retired and you have lots of time on your hands, but the working folks who are the backbone of our community don't have that opportunity to come. If you're not invited to the party, you can't come. But if you're invited to the party, then you have an opportunity to come, or you don't have to come. Again, thank you.
It is nice to get invited to the party. You know, as I spoke earlier about my journey, you know, when I first decided to run for mayor, I mean, I'm hoping most people in this room, it's not the first time you've seen me, because we've done this a few times. As a part of it, I've learned so much, you know. I'm a master educator, so everything is an education. And we need much more education for our citizens and our community and how we reach out, which is also why I started this meeting by saying I would have loved to be able to use all the technology in this room today. But unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to. So we have a lot of things at our fingertips, and groups want to learn certain ways, others want to learn, you know, different ways. And if you looked around the room, you probably don't see too many of me. And so when Randy, Mr. Briley over there, says his voice wasn't being heard, you know, for 4 years, I went to every city council meeting. I've worked very hard to be a positive voice in the room without being disrespectful. I've made mistakes, gone up and cleaned up those mistakes. You know, sit down with Mr. Bailey or other city staff. I've done all of the tours Mr. Briley talks about. I've gotten my education. I don't, you know, it ultimately doesn't matter that I, you know, went to New York University and Penn State University and have a master's degree and could, again, run down a list of experience. So how are you going to trust me? By filling more seats in our room, by giving the people on the camera a voice as well, by using technology to bring more people to the table. That is my goal. And that happens immediately if you elect me. When I drove down the street, unfortunately, why am I running again? It's because I saw Charlie's sign out there. And I said, ah! You know, not because Charlie isn't awesome, but because, wow.
The reason I'm running again for re-election is I'd like to continue the work that we've started. We've started a lot of really good work. In the 8 years I've been on the council, we've done a lot of really good things. My number one priority is if I had to name one thing, it'd probably be quality of life for the residents. And there's so many things that go with that. Safety, parks, infrastructure, to make sure that everything that the city provides, city services, is functioning and is in good shape that will last over time. Our infrastructure system is second to none, especially for a town our size. So there's a lot of really good things, but balanced growth also helps with quality of life. We can't just be everything to everybody. So we have to take into what's good for the community and work towards that. As I said, this is an amazing, amazing place, and we need to work hard to keep it that way. Doesn't mean that it won't change. Fredericksburg has changed in the 175 years since it was founded. We just have to change in a positive way that takes care of the citizens. Thank you.
Well, we are at the 90-minute mark, so that will conclude the candidate forum. I want to, on behalf of the Chamber, express sincere gratitude to each of the candidates for sharing their time and their opinions and their priorities with us. Thanks to each of you who attended and those who are watching live. Thanks once again to Hill Country University Center for giving us their venue, and our partners at FBG Live for live streaming the event, which will also be available on demand. So if you know anybody who would still like to see it, it will be available now through the time of election. As a friendly reminder, early voting for the city election will be from April 24th through May the 2nd, and election day is Saturday, May 6th. Again, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I thank you. Have a great rest of your evening.